My daughter-in-law told me straight to my face, "We can't take you on the cruise. No money, you stay home." I simply smiled and said, "All right." But by the time they stepped onto that ship, I was already sipping coffee on the deck. My son shouted, "Are you following us? Are you crazy? Get off this boat." But then the captain walked over, and one sentence from him made their faces drain white and drop to their knees. Before we start this story, friends, I ask just one small favor: subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and tell me in the comments which city you're listening from. Your support helps these stories travel farther. Now, let's begin. The kitchen smelled of sautéed onions and peppers, comforting, familiar. It reminded me of the days when the house was full, and laughter echoed through every hallway. I flipped the patties in the skillet, pushing away the sting of knowing I'd probably eat dinner alone again. My world had shrunk to the tiny carriage house behind the huge estate I once owned. 10 years ago, after my husband passed, I signed everything over to my son, Tavor. "You're the man now. Lead the family," I told him. I wanted him to grow into responsibility, but instead he grew into Kenyatta's shadow. Her demands got bigger, and my place in my own home got smaller, like an old keepsake. No one wanted to throw away but didn't want around either. The door creaked open. Cold autumn air slipped inside before they did. Tavorius looked uneasy, avoiding my eyes. Kenyatta, dramatic as always, tossed her coat aside and sighed like the whole world was weighing her down. "Mama, we need to talk," he murmured, voice trembling. Kenyatta jumped in immediately. "Mother Oila, we have a crisis." Her sweetness always had a sour aftertaste. "The roof," she said. "You remember the leak?" Of course I did. I had taken almost my entire burial savings, $15,000, and given it to them for repairs. "Well," she continued, hand pressed to her chest, "the estimate went up. Mold, rot, structural damage, everything. We even chipped in ourselves." I stayed quiet. I could feel the bad news coming the way old bones feel a storm. "And," I asked softly. "We can't take you on the cruise," she blurted. A flicker of satisfaction crossed her face before she pretended to look sorry. "There's no money left, Oilia, you understand." Tavorius finally looked at me, guilt swimming in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mama. It's better if you stay here. Watch the workers, watch the garden. We'll bring back a souvenir." "Yes," Kenyatta added, lips pursed in false sympathy. "Someone has to look after the place while we struggle." I looked at her wrist. Her sleeve slipped just enough for me to see it: a diamond tennis bracelet. Real white gold. Real stones. Real expensive. 3 times the cost of the repair bill she cried about. She yanked her sleeve down. "Too late." "All right," I said calmly. "If the money isn't there, it isn't there. You to go rest." They stared, surprised I didn't break down. Relief beat out suspicion, and they hurried off to pack, suddenly forgetting their crisis. That night, I did my chores, washed dishes, cleaned the counters. Everything felt strangely quiet. Near midnight, I carried the trash toward the big dumpster by the main gate. The wind scattered leaves across the driveway. A crumpled piece of heavy paper rolled to my feet. I picked it up and smoothed it out under the dim streetlight. Apex Voyages. Paid by Tavorius St. James. Yesterday's date. Grand Owner Suite. The Gilded Magnolia. Total, $15,000. The exact amount I had given them. There was no mold, no repairs, no emergency. They used my life savings to buy themselves a luxury vacation, and told me to stay home and watch the house. My heartbeat didn't race, it settled. Steady, strong. Cold clarity washed over me, they thought. I was just a harmless old woman. They forgot who I used to be, the woman whose name carried weight in the trucking and logistics world long before I ever tied an apron around my waist. I folded the invoice neatly, slid it into my cardigan pocket, went back to the carriage house, locked the door, and walked straight into my bedroom. From the bottom drawer of my dresser, buried beneath folded linen tablecloths, I pulled out an old leather agenda. It still held the scent of aged hide and crisp, expensive paper. When I opened it, the first page revealed only one number, a number I hadn't dared dial in 12 long years. A direct line, a personal access route. I picked up the phone. It rang for a long stretch, but I knew he would answer. No matter the hour, he always did for me. Speaking. A rough, startled voice came through. "Who is calling on this line?" "Hello, Supriang," I said, my tone cold and firm. "It's Oilia. I'm activating my executive override. I need a stateroom on the Gilded Magnolia. Immediately, Oilia." Silence filled the line, heavy and sharp. "Yes, it's me. Don't ask questions. Just listen." I need the current ownership structure of Riverflow Holdings right now. Within a minute, he returned with information that made something inside me spark a genuine smile. The first one in 2 days. The cruise line running the Gilded Magnolia wasn't just a partner. It was a company we had acquired 15 years ago, back when I ran the empire. And according to the records Cyprien dug up, my silent partner shares still extended into it. Legally, I wasn't requesting a favor. I was preparing to step aboard my own vessel. The next 48 hours moved in a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. But my body remembered it, instantly cold, steady, unstoppable efficiency. While Tavorius and Kenyatta dashed around the house, arguing about luggage and outfits, I was locked in the bathroom with the water running, conducting a quiet war over the phone. My attorney, Solomon, his voice, dry and crackly as an old barn door, initially tried to warn me against big moves. But when I laid out everything, he chuckled. Oilia, you always did know how to play the long game. Fine, I'll prepare the documents to temporarily shift operational control for the duration of the voyage. Captain Thaddeus will be informed. Thaddeus, Emmerich Chadus, once a young first mate I'd trusted for his honesty. That worked very much in my favor. Between the calls, I packed. I opened the cedar closet at the back, its key hanging on a chain around my neck next to my crucifix. Inside were pieces of my old life, tailored garments Kenyatta had never laid eyes on, or she would have pawned them long ago. I selected a cream linen pantsuit, perfectly cut Italian fabric, a silk scarf in warm terracotta and gold, not a house, not worn slippers. If I was going to battle, I was going dressed as the woman I once was. The morning they left, chaos erupted in the main house. Kenyatta shrieked about missing makeup, while Tavorius scrambled to stuff yet another overpacked bag into the SUV. I stepped outside, wearing my usual gray raincoat over my new attire, carrying a small worn travel bag that decoyed. I called. He nearly dropped a toiletry case. Mama, what now? We're late. I just wanted to say I won't be staying home alone. I replied calmly. I'm going to Sister Altha's. Her sciatica is acting up. She needs help. I'll be back next week same time as you. Kenyatta poked her head out the car window, sunglasses already on. Oh wonderful, she said, pleased. Less electricity wasted. Leave the keys with the neighbor. Okay, let's go. Tavorius knew. No hug. No goodbye. The car screeched away, leaving a faint smell of burnt rubber behind. I watched the taillights fade. Safe travels, I whispered. Exactly 30 minutes later, a long black sedan glided to my gate. The chauffeur stepped out and bowed. Mrs. St. James, we are prepared. Captain Thaddeus is awaiting your arrival. I slid into the soft leather seats. The raincoat fell aside. I adjusted my scarf and sunglasses. The woman staring back at me in the mirror wasn't the frail old lady they thought they could manipulate. She was the leader they had forgotten. The drive to the New Orleans port took an hour. Traffic parted for us thanks to the special clearance pass. At the terminal, crowds pushed and shouted in long lines, fighting heat, humidity, and their own impatience. My driver didn't stop there. We bypassed everyone, heading straight toward a gated entry marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The guard recognized the plates and lifted the barrier instantly. We rolled directly onto the private section of the wharf. And there, behind a chain-link fence separating VIP access from the general boarding mob, I saw them. Tavorius sweating, dragging massive suitcases, Kenyatta arguing with a porter, hands flying wildly. They looked like cheap actors trying to perform wealth they didn't own because they didn't. My door opened. 2 young crew members in pristine white uniforms rushed over. Mrs. St. James, one said reverently, lifting my small bag. Welcome aboard. The captain has ordered your belongings delivered to the owner suite. Please follow us. I didn't look toward the fence. I didn't need to. I walked up the gangway as the limousine's shadow swallowed their false dreams. Inside the owner suite, silence greeted me, luxurious, controlled. I approached the wall-mounted monitor linked to the ship's internal security feed, pressed a button. The screen divided into multiple camera views. There, the corridor camera. My son and his wife walked down the hallway, gawking like wide-eyed children. Tavorius lugged the bags, panting. Kenyatta floated ahead, admiring the polished wood. They stopped at Suite 400 for the diamond suite, the one bought with my $15,000. I switched to the interior camera. Kenyatta squealed the second she entered. Lord have mercy, Tavor. Look at this balcony. Look at this shower. She spun around, her bright fuchsia dress swirling like a neon storm. And I watched. Calm, steady, prepared. Because this voyage had only just begun. Tavorius wiped the sweat from his forehead, dropped into the armchair, and stretched out with a satisfied grin. Well, worth it? He asked, gazing at his wife with admiration. You better believe it, Kenyatta replied, rushing to the table where a chilled bottle of champagne sat waiting in an ice bucket. Open it. We need to celebrate our freedom. The cork popped sharply like a gunshot through the speakers in my suite. Tavorius filled their flutes until the foam spilled onto the carpet. But they couldn't care less. To us, Kenyatta declared proudly, lifting her glass. And to finally escaping that old crypt. They clinked their drinks. Tavor. I took a long sip and laughed. I felt a little weird leaving Mama behind. She was just standing there with that sad grocery bag. Kenyatta rolled her eyes, twisted her face into mock pity, and hunched over. She shuffled her feet dramatically, imitating an elderly woman. Her voice turned gravelly and pathetic, nothing like mine. Oh children, go ahead, I'll stay with the cats. Guard the house, save a penny. They burst into loud ugly laughter. She's hopeless, Tavor. No money. She swallowed that lie whole, Kenyatta scoffed. She believes anything as long as she's not in the way. She's probably sipping her dusty tea right now. Feeling sorry for us, Tavorius added, topping off his glass. Let her babysit the house. Fresh air will help her bones. Meanwhile, we live like royalty. I stared at the screen. My cup of coffee didn't even tremble. No hurt, no guilt, just a cold wave of disgust, like watching insects crawling over sugar. They thought nothing could touch them. Enough depressing talk, Kenyatta said, finishing her drink in one gulp. Let's go. I want to see the restaurant. I heard the chef is French, and we need to show the staff who's in charge. Otherwise these tourist ships get lazy. They slammed the door and left. On the hallway camera, I watched Kenyatta snap her fingers at a maid, demanding the cart be moved instantly. I lifted the internal phone. Captain, I said. Yes, Madam St. James, Thaddeus answered, crisp and steady. The guests from 404 have left their suite. Begin phase 2. Pack their belongings neatly but without extra hospitality, and lock their access. It will be done. Their new quarters are prepared. I leaned back. The performance had officially begun. An hour later, as the ship drifted away from the port, sunlight melting into gold across the Mississippi, the surveillance camera showed Tavorius and Kenyatta tormenting a bartender over the amount of ice in their drinks. Eventually they returned to their suite, flushed and eager to dress for dinner. I turned the audio on. Tavorius tapped his card against the lock. Red light. He frowned, wiped the card on his sleeve, and tried again. Red. What are you fumbling with? Kenyatta snapped. I need the bathroom. It demagnetized or something, Tavorius muttered, panic creeping in. He pulled the handle. Locked. A senior steward appeared with perfect timing, posture straight, expression unreadable. Problems? He asked politely. This stupid card won't work. Kenyatta barked. Open the door. Our things are inside. The steward checked his tablet, then shook his head calmly. My apologies, Mrs. St. James. There was a booking correction. This suite is reserved for priority shareholders. An asset reassignment has occurred. What? Tavorius choked. We paid $15,000. This is our cabin. Your stay in this category has been annulled. The steward replied smoothly. Your belongings have already been transferred to accommodations matching your current loyalty tier. He handed them to heavy brass keys. The tags read 0012. And where is that? Kenyatta asked sharply. Lower deck, ma'am. Stern section. Near the engineering block. Are you out of your mind? She shrieked so loudly the echo bounced down the corridor. The BGE, you want to shove us into the beach? I will complain to everyone on this ship. The administration office is located on the sun deck in the VIP zone, the steward replied calmly, pointing upward. But the decision stands. Kenyatta snatched the keys and threw them at Tavor. Move, she hissed. We're going to destroy this cheap operation. They'll crawl for forgiveness. Like enraged bulls, they stormed toward the stairs leading to the upper deck, where I sat comfortably in a soft armchair, sipping espresso, a book of French poetry open in my lap. Their footsteps thundered closer. Their fury was coming straight for me. The VIP sun deck door burst open with a bang so loud it startled the gulls circling overhead. I didn't flinch. I just turned a page and brought the porcelain cup to my lips. Where is the damn manager? Kenyatta screeched, slicing through the peaceful river breeze. Someone get out here right now. We paid money. Tavorius bellowed behind her. You can't stick us in a broom closet. They barged onto the deck, ready to tear someone apart, not realizing the only person standing there Was me. The deck was completely empty, only me at the center table beneath a canvas shade, and a waiter standing stiffly nearby with a silver coffee pot. They stopped in their tracks. At first, all they saw was a figure, a woman in a crisp white linen suit. A wide hat, oversized dark glasses covering half her face, a woman radiating calm, and that quiet, effortless confidence that only comes from old wealth. Kenyatta stepped forward, ready to continue shouting, but the words died in her throat. She narrowed her eyes. Slowly, I took off my glasses and looked at them. The silence on the deck was louder than any screaming. Tavorius breathed out, his face stretched, jaw dropped, making him look like a foolish fish dumped on a riverbank. Kenyatt, turned pale, then red blotches rising up her neck. You! She shrieked, disbelief and fury tangled in her voice. What are you doing here? I placed my glasses beside my book and calmly checked my watch. Drinking coffee, enjoying the river, until your shouting ruined the morning. Tavorius moved toward me, fists clenching, his fear twisted into aggression, the reaction of a weak man cornered by his own lies. Are you following us? He barked, spit flying. Have you finally lost it, old woman? Get out of here, crazy stalker. How did you even get on this ship? Who paid for this? It's our money. The truth slammed into Kenyatta. She charged toward the table, eyes burning. You stole our money. You never paid for the repairs. You spent our money to destroy our vacation. It was my money, Kenyatta. I replied softly. The money I saved for years. The money you two robbed from me with your story of rotting beams. You witch. Kenyatta snapped. All her remaining control vanished. She lunged across the table, reaching for my jacket, ready to shake me. Security, throw this beggar out. Her nails were inches from my suit when a voice thundered across the deck like a ship's horn. Remove your hands. Not a shout, a command. Immediate, absolute. Kenyatta jerked back as if electrocuted. Tavorius shrank into his shoulders. From the bridge doors stepped Captain Thaddeus, in full dress uniform, gold stripes, peaked cap, a walking cliff face. 2 huge security officers followed behind him. Thaddeus didn't even look at Tavorius as he passed. He positioned himself between me and Kenyatta, his shadow swallowing her whole. Take your hands off the owner of this vessel, he said, his voice dripping contempt. Owner, Tavorius repeated. He let out a shaky laugh and pointed at me. Captain, you must be confused. This is my mother. She's a retiree. She lives in a tiny guest house. She barely has money for sweet tea. Thaddeus turned his icy glare onto him. Mr. St. James, he said coldly, let me educate you. Madame Oilia St. James holds the controlling shares of Riverflow Holdings. She owns the shipping company, the port behind us, and this riverboat, from keel to stack. Tavorius staggered. He looked at me, then at the captain, back at me. His entire worldview crumbled, the world where he was clever and I was foolish. That's impossible, Kenyatta whispered, gripping a chair to stay upright. She has nothing. She gave everything to us. Technically, Thaddeus continued, mercilessly, you are not at a resort. You are inside Madame Olia's personal residence, and your behavior qualifies as trespassing and aggression. The realization tore through them. Not just the wealth, but the fact that they stole $15,000 from a woman who controlled millions. They had stolen pocket change from a dragon they mistook for a lizard. Mama, Tavorius wheezed. His legs buckled. He didn't sit, he collapsed. His knees hit the deck with a thud. Kenyatta sank beside him, mouth opening and closing. Speechless, their arrogance evaporated, replaced by raw animal fear, while I merely stirred my coffee with a tiny spoon. Immer, I said quietly, my coffee's getting cold. Sit. We need to discuss today's route. Then I added, without looking at them, remove them from my sight. Security lifted them by their arms like sacks. Tavorius muttered nonsense. His feet dragged along the planks. Kenyatta had gone rigid, a statue of horror and confusion. I didn't throw them off the ship. Not yet. Emmer knew exactly what I wanted. They were taken to cabin 012. I knew that room, directly above the propeller shaft. No windows, constant vibration. Even a glass of water walked across the nightstand, perfect for thinking. All day, I said nothing. Let them stew in fear and uncertainty. I imagined Kenyatta pacing the tiny room, hissing excuses. It was just a loan. We would have paid it back. She's a mother. She'll forgive us. They hoped my heart, the heart they had stepped on for years, would break again. At 8 p.m., I sent a steward. He carried a thick cream envelope with gold embossing. An invitation. Private dinner room. The Romanoff, 8:30 p.m. I arrived first. The room was intimate, built for powerful meetings. Oak-paneled walls, warm sconces, heavy emerald curtains. I took my place at the head of the table. But the deck was empty. Only me sitting at the center table under a canvas awning, and a waiter standing at a respectful distance with a silver coffee pot. They froze. At first, they only saw a silhouette, a woman in a flawless white linen suit, a wide-brimmed hat, and oversized dark glasses covering half her face. A woman radiating calm, and that slow, effortless confidence that only comes from very old money. Kenyatta stepped forward, ready to keep screaming, but the words died in her throat. She squinted. I removed my glasses slowly, and looked straight at them. The silence hanging over the deck was louder than any shout. Mama Tavorius exhaled. His face stretched, his jaw dropped, making him look like a fish flopping on a riverbank. Kenyatta turned pale, then red splotches blooming up her neck. You, she hissed, and in that word there was disbelief and rage. What are you doing here? I placed my glasses neatly on the table beside my book and checked my watch. Drinking coffee, Kenyatta, and enjoying the view until you arrived and ruined it with your screaming. Tavorius stepped closer, fists clenching, his fear twisted into anger, the instinctive reaction of a weak man cornered by his own lies. Are you stalking us? He spat. Have you lost your mind? Old woman. How did you even get here? On whose money? It's our money. The realization hit Kenyatta like lightning. She rushed toward the table, eyes blazing. You stole our money. You didn't pay for the repairs. You bought a ticket to ruin our vacation. It was my money, Kenyatta, I replied calmly. The money I saved for years, money you stole from me with your fantasy about rotten beams. You witch, Kenyatta snapped. She lunged across the table, trying to grab me by the lapel. Get out of here. Security, throw this pauper. Her nails were inches from my jacket when a voice like a ship's horn shook the air. Remove your hands. It wasn't loud. It was a command that allowed no delay. Kenyatta recoiled as if shocked. Tavorius shrank back. From the bridge doors, Captain Immer Thaddeus stepped out in full dress uniform, gold stripes gleaming. 2 large security officers followed behind him. Thaddeus passed the frozen couple without a glance and stationed himself between us, blocking me from their reach. Remove your hands from the owner of this vessel, he growled, staring down at Kenyatta with open disgust. Tavorius blinked. Owner, he squeaked, pointing at me with a shaky laugh. Captain, you're mistaken. That's my mother. She's a pensioner. She lives in a guest cottage. She only has money for sweet tea. The captain turned his head slowly toward Tavorius, his gaze freezing the air. Mr. St. James, he said with icy formality. Allow me to clarify. Madame Oyea, St. James owns the controlling shares in Riverflow Holdings. She owns this company, the port behind us, and this entire vessel from keel to stack. Tavorius swayed like someone punched him. He looked at me, then at the captain, then back. His world cracked. The world where he was clever and I was foolish. That can't be, Kenyatta whispered, clutching a chair for support. She has nothing. She gave everything to us. Technically, Thaddeus continued, you are not at a resort, you are in Madame Oelia's private living area, and based on your behavior, you are uninvited guests who have committed aggression and trespassing. The meaning sank into them. Not just the wealth, but that they had stolen $15,000 from a woman who controlled millions. Loose change from a dragon they believed was a lizard. Mama, Tavorius wheezed. His legs gave out. He collapsed onto the deck, knees thudding against the tick. Kenyatta slumped beside him, mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Their arrogance evaporated, leaving only raw fear before the woman, calmly stirring her coffee. Immer, I said softly, never looking at them. The coffee is getting cold. Let's discuss the route. Take them away from my sight. Security lifted them like sacks. Tavorius muttered nonsense while being dragged. Kenyatta was frozen like a statue carved from terror. They weren't thrown off the ship. Not yet. Immer knew my intentions. A different torture waited. Cabin 012. Directly over the propeller shaft. No windows. Constant vibration. A room meant for reflection and regret. I let them stew in their fear the entire day. I could already imagine Kenyatta pacing that tiny room, hissing lies, rehearsing excuses. It was alone. We were going to return it. She's a mother. She forgive. They hoped the heart they crushed for years would soften again. At 8 p.m. I sent a steward with an envelope, thick cream paper, gold embossing. An invitation? Private dining room? The Romanov. 8:30 p.m. I arrived early. The room was small, and elegant taupe-paneled walls. Dim sconces, emerald drapes. I sat at the head of the table. Before me was baked trout and a glass of dry Riesling. At exactly 8:30, they entered. Kenyatta had changed into a black cocktail dress, trying to look pitiful. Tavorius wore the same wrinkled blazer. They resembled children summoned to the principal, but hope still flickered in their eyes. "Mama," Tavorius began, "we're glad we can talk calmly. Sit." They sat, Kenyatta plastered on a trembling smile. "Mother Oilia," she began with a fake, gentle tone, tearing her napkin. "What happened earlier was a misunderstanding. We were stressed. The renovations, we didn't want to worry you." I cut my fish in silence. No waiters. No menus. Nothing on their side of the table except polished wood and a thick gray folder. "Where's," Tavorius began. "You will not be served dinner." I put down my fork and looked at my son with nothing but exhaustion. "Have you eaten? You've been eating at my expense for 5 years. I imagine you're full." "What are you talking about?" he stammered, eyes darting to the folder. I pushed it toward them. "Open it." His hands shook as he lifted the cover. Kenyatta leaned in. The first page, a spreadsheet, dates, numbers, red notes. "That is not a cruise bill," I said calmly, sipping my wine. "That is a forensic audit. Every account you had access to, because of the power of attorney." Tavorius went white. Kenyatta swallowed hard. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" My voice was quiet but heavy. "Blood pressure medicine, $400. You charged $1,500. Mama, prices in reality, the extra went to your manicures." I didn't need the folder. I knew every detail. "Groceries, you brought me cheap grits and milk, but wrote off $1,000 a week as helping Mama. You even fueled your SUV with my pension card." "Mistakes," Tavorius whispered. "And the roof repair $15,000. The peak of your greed." Kenyatta panicked. "It was a loan. We planned to return it." Tavorius had problems at work. I slammed my palm on the table. They flinched. I was patient. I said softly, "I waited for your conscience to wake up, but you are bottomless." I nodded toward the folder. "Check the last page. Bank notice. An hour ago, I revoked all powers of attorney. Your cards are blocked. Joint accounts frozen pending an embezzlement investigation." "Embezzlement?" Tavorius gasped. "Mama, are you pressing charges? Your personal cards are overdrawn. Credit limits canceled by my order. You don't have $1, not even for water." Kenyatta jumped to her feet. "You can't do this. We're your family. How will we live? How did I live without you?" I answered quietly. I pressed the button for staff. "Dinner is over. You may go. Tomorrow will be difficult for you." Security escorted them out as they clutched the folder to their chests. They disappeared into the lower decks, and I remained alone with cold fish and the bitter taste of victory. The next morning, fog blanketed the river. I sat in the solarium, palms, orchids, warm air, a cup of herbal tea in my hands, a blanket on my knees. Below, in cabin 012, the storm raged. Security reported shouting through the night. Cornered rats always bite each other. Stripped of money, status, and the illusion of power, Tavorius and Kenyatta turned on each other. The door creaked. "Mother Oilia," a trembling voice soaked in tears. I set down my cup and looked. Kenyatta stood there different. No proud posture, no predator's glare. Dressed simply, hair messy, no makeup, eyes swollen from crying. The doctor barely had time to catch his breath as Kenyatta dragged him into the library, like a woman possessed. Her earlier tears had evaporated now. Her face was twisted with wild purpose. Tavorius stumbled behind her, pale and trembling, as if he wasn't sure whether he should run or hide. "Doctor, quickly!" Kenyatta screeched, jerking him forward so violently that the sleeve of his coat nearly tore. "She's here, right here. She's a danger to herself and everyone around her." The ship's physician, a weary man in his 50s with a graying beard, blinked in confusion as he tried to free his arm from her crushing grip. I sat in my leather chair, calm as still water, looking up from the quarterly cargo reports I'd been reviewing. The sudden chaos at the doorway felt almost comical compared to the silence of the room just moments before. Kenyatta pointed at me with a shaking finger, her voice cracking with fake urgency. "Doctor, look at her. She's delusional. She thinks she owns this whole ship. She needs immediate psychiatric evaluation before she hurts someone." Tavorius gulped loudly behind her. He couldn't even look at me. The doctor examined the Kenyatta's wild eyes. Tavorius's shaking hands. My calm expression and confusion creased across his face. "Mrs. St. James," he said carefully, "I was told this was a medical emergency. It is. She's unstable." Kenyatta barked, nearly frothing. "She's hallucinating. She thinks she runs the entire company. She's dangerous, I tell you." I folded the papers on my lap and rose slowly to my feet. Smoothing the jacket of my suit, Kenyatta, I said quietly. You really should have stopped while you were only sinking slowly, but instead, you've decided to drown in drama. She recoiled as if my voice were a slap. Doctor, I continued, turning my gaze on him, you are being manipulated. My daughter-in-law is attempting a very clumsy coup to declare me incompetent. She believes it will restore access to the funds. I already froze. The doctor blinked, then glanced at Tavorius. Is this true? Tavorius's lips trembled, but no sound came out. Kenyatta exploded. Don't listen to him. She's lying. She's losing her mind. The door behind them suddenly darkened. Captain Thaddeus appeared, massive and unmoving as a steel wall. 2 security officers at his side. His voice was colder than river frost. Doctor, stand down. Mrs. St. James is under no such condition, and this, he said, pointing to Kenyatta and Tavorius, is an attempt at coercion, harassment, and fraudulent medical intervention. Kenyatta's face crumpled. Double quotes, no dash, no you don't understand. She can't do this to us. She already has. Thaddeus said simply. Security stepped forward. Kenyatta backed away, shaking her head like a cornered animal. You can't take me. I'm not going anywhere. She's the crazy one she is. Tavorius slid to the floor, hands over his face. The doctor exhaled slowly, finally understanding the truth. I clasped my hands behind my back. Escort them. I instructed softly. The officers gently but firmly took Kenyatta and Tavorius by the arms. Kenyatta thrashed, screaming my name, shouting accusations that melted into nonsense. Tavorius didn't resist. He moved like an empty shell. The moment the doors shut behind them, silence returned. Heavy, clean, final. I sat back down, picked up the report, and turned the page. For the first time in years, the air around me felt light, as if someone had finally opened a window in a suffocating room. The deck was silent. Only I sat at the center table under the canvas awning. A waiter standing rigidly at a respectful distance, silver coffee pot in hand. They froze, at first seeing only a shadow, a woman in a flawless white linen suit, wide-brimmed hat, and dark glasses concealing half her face. The calm confidence radiated off me, a lazy certainty reserved for those born into old money. Kenyatta took a tentative step forward, mouth opening to scream, then freezing mid. She squinted. Slowly, deliberately, I removed my glasses and met their gaze. Silence fell heavier than any shout. Mama, Tavorius stammered, jaw slack, his expression that of a fish flopping on dry land. Kenyatta paled, then flushed, anger blooming across her neck. You, she hissed, a mixture of disbelief and rage. What are you doing here? I set my glasses beside my book and checked my watch. Drinking coffee? Enjoying the view until you arrived and shattered it with your shouting. Tavorius clenched his fists, fear curdling into aggression. The defensive stance of a weak man cornered by his own delusions. Are you stalking us? He spat. Have you lost your mind, old woman? How did you even get here? On whose dime? It's our money, I said softly, deliberately. The realization hit Kenyatta like a physical blow. Her eyes flared with manic intensity. You stole our money, she shrieked. You didn't pay for the repairs, you bought a ticket to ruin our vacation. It was my money, Kenyatta. Your money, I replied calmly, voice steady as steel. The money I saved for decades. The money you stole from me under the guise of rotten beams. You, which Kenyatta lunged, claws raking toward my jacket. Get her. Security, a voice, low and unyielding, cut through the air like a ship's horn. Remove your hands. Kenyatta recoiled. Tavorius shrank into himself. From the bridge doors, Immer Thaddeus appeared, uniform impeccable, posture like a cliff face. 2 security officers flanked him. Without glancing at Tavorius, he positioned himself between me and Kenyatta, shadow swallowing my daughter-in-law. Remove your hands from the owner of this vessel, he commanded. Eyes ice on Kenyatta.Tavor. I use blinked. Confusion etched on his face. Owner, he stammered. The captain's gaze shifted, cold and unrelenting. Mr. St. James, allow me to enlighten you. Madame Oilia St. James holds controlling interest in Riverflow Holdings. She owns this company, this port, and this riverboat from keel to stack. Tavorius swayed, his world where he was clever, and I owed, and we collapsed. Kenyatta's whispered denial could not mask the dawning terror. She has nothing. She gave everything to us. Technically, Thaddeus continued, relentless. You are not at a resort. You are in Madame Oilia's living room. You are uninvited guests, trespassing and aggressive. Your theft of $15,000. Petty change stolen from a dragon you mistook for a lizard. Tavorius wheezed, legs buckling. He collapsed with a dull thud. Kenyatta slumped beside him, mouth opening and closing in silent horror. Arrogance, superiority evaporated. Only raw fear remained before the woman calmly stirring her coffee. Immer, I murmured, voice low. The coffee is cooling. Seat them. Discuss the route. Keep them from my sight. Security lifted them, sandbags in human form, dragging them to cabin 012 directly above the propeller shaft. The vibration alone would be reflection enough. All day I remained silent, letting them stew in fear, uncertainty, and conjecture. By evening, a steward delivered an envelope of thick cream paper, embossed in gold. Dinner invitation. The Romanoff.io arrived early. The room was intimate, oak-paneled, lit by dim sconces, heavy emerald velvet drapes, shielding us from the rest of the world. I sat at the head, composed, immaculate, and ready. Before me lay a dish of baked trout, a glass of dry Riesling. At precisely 8:30, they entered hesitantly. Kenyatta had donned a black cocktail dress, a mournful attempt at pity. Tavorius looked like a crumpled shadow of his usual self. Both appeared as children summoned to the principal's office. Hope flickering faintly. Mama, Tavorius began cautiously, stepping forward. We're so glad we can sit, I interrupted, pointing to the chairs across from me. They obeyed. Kenyatta forced a trembling smile. Mother Oilia, she cooed, fidgeting with a napkin. What a terrible misunderstanding. Today, we were shocked. You understand? Renovations, nerves. We only wanted what was best. We didn't want to worry you. I cut a piece of trout in silence. No clinking silverware, no waiters, nothing. Only the polished table and a thick gray folder at its center. Where's dinner? Tavorius asked, bewildered. You will not be served. I met his eyes, tired, empty, resolute. Have you eaten enough, Tavor? 5 years of dining at my expense. I think you're full. He fumbled, eyes darting to the folder. I slid it toward them. Open it. Tavorius flipped it with trembling hands. Kenyatta craned over spreadsheets, numbers, red notes full, forensic accounting of every cent I entrusted. Every account accessed via power of attorney. That is not a cruise bill, I said, sipping my wine. It's an audit of every dollar you stole under your fairy tales about rotten beams. Receipts padded, gas charge to my pension, manicures billed as medicine, $15,000 for roof repairs, my last savings, stolen while looking me in the eye. They shrank. I slammed my palm on the table. Silence, Torius, I said softly, voice calm but sharper than any scream. Check the last page. Bank notification. All powers of attorney revoked. Cards frozen. Joint accounts blocked pending investigation. Embezzlement. Tavorius looked up in horror. Kenyatta jumped. Chair toppled. Dinner is concluded, I said, pressing the call button. Go to your cabin. Sleep. Tomorrow will be hard. Security guided them away. Alone, I returned to my fish, the bitter taste of victory on my tongue. Ash and cold triumph. Morning brought fog. The river silent except for the low hum of the engines. Below, cabin 012 vibrated with unrest. Screaming, blaming, terrorots in a corner biting each other. I sat, calm, sipping tea, watching the mist drift across the river. Then a soft, trembling voice. Mother Oilia. I set my cup down. Kenyatta stood at the solarium doorway, hands nervously twisting. Hair in a messy bun. Makeup gone. Eyes red and raw. The predator gone. Only a scared, pleading woman remained. He smiled uncertainly. We're here. Is this an excursion? You've decided to forgive us and take us to see the old cotton fields. They say the history here is powerful. Kenyatta remained silent. Eyes fixed on the open gangway hatch, weary and small. This is your stop, I said flatly, refusing his smile. Get out. Oh wonderful, Tavorius nodded, attempting false cheer. A walk. Some fresh air. It'll do Kenyatta good. She's completely shattered. Let's grab our jackets. No need to go back to the cabin. The head of security's voice struck like a hammer. Mr. St. James. Mrs. St. James. Exit. They froze. The cold autumn air from the landing rushed over them, but they didn't register it. Exit, Kenyatta whispered incredulous. I nodded toward the gangway. Go. You are expected. Under the firm guidance of security, they stepped onto the metal grating. Slowly, hesitantly, as if expecting me to laugh and say it was a joke. But when their feet hit the cracked damp concrete, reality hit. Before them lay their luggage, for massive plastic cases they had proudly dragged aboard in New Orleans. Beside them, a folder. The unpaid doctor's bill. The eviction notice. Tavorius froze. His gaze darted between the suitcases, the empty quay with no taxis or buses, only a lone dog sniffing at a bollard, and finally, to me leaning against the railing above. "Mama," he screamed, voice cracking. "What does this mean? Are you leaving us here?" Kenyatta clutched her suitcase handle as if it were an anchor. "You have no right. This is the middle of nowhere. We have no money. The cards are blocked. How will we get home? 500 miles. I looked down. From this height, they were small, insignificant, no longer predators, poisoning my life, but buzzing, fragile insects. The wind whipped my hair, but I felt warmth for the first time in years. "You told me before leaving," I called, voice carrying across the landing, amplified by the river. "No money. Stay home. You said you couldn't afford a ticket for your mother." I let the pause hang. "Well, now you have no money. You cannot continue this journey, Mommy." Tavorius dashed toward the gangway, but it was already rising. Metal groaned and tore from the concrete with a clang. "Forgive us. We'll repay everything. Don't leave us here. We'll die. You are young. You are healthy," I said calmly. "You have hands and feet. Find work. Hitchhike. After all, you always claimed to be self-made, to have built your lives from scratch. Here's your chance without my money." The gangway locked into place with a final crash. Engines roared, turning the dark river to foam. The gilded magnolia drifted from the dock. "Stop, stop, you old witch!" Kenyatta shrieked, flinging a shoe into the water, watching it disappear. "I curse you, you'll die alone." I didn't respond. Their screams faded into the distance, swallowed by the river and wind. On the empty pier, they were two tiny figures, clinging to a pile of useless belongings, without a penny to their names. The past stayed behind on the concrete. Emmerich approached, hat in hand, looking at me questioningly. "Course for New Orleans, Madam St. James, returning to schedule." I looked forward, river widening into the endless horizon, sky clearing, sun breaking through clouds. "No, Captain," I said, lips twitching with a quiet smile. "To hell with the schedule." I drew in a deep breath, savoring the sweet air. "Plot a course north, Emmerich, all the way to Minnesota headquarters." He blinked in surprise, a spark of adventure lighting his eyes. 2 weeks sailing, what do we expect there?" "I've always dreamed of seeing the fall foliage on the upper Mississippi," I replied. "They say when the maples turn, it looks like a sea of fire." I've waited 30 years, first work, then husband, then son, then grandchildren that never came. Enough waiting. A heat rose in my chest, huge and long forgotten. Not a chuckle, not a smirk, pure, loud, unrestrained laughter. I threw my head back to the sky. The sound rang across the river, startling the gulls. I laughed at my former blindness, at their greed, at the absurdity of life. I laughed because I had money, I had a ship, and I had an entire river of time ahead. My life was not ending, it was only beginning.